think there will be people who cannot see themselves serving under Danielle Smith. But, you know, you and I both know Smith. She's very intelligent. She's very articulate. And as long as she understands that she's not going to get her way 100% on the Sovereignty Act, I think she's going to be able to find a lot of common ground. You know, that one of the other things she said is we're not ever going to bring back lockdowns and vaccine passports and mask mandates if there's another outbreak of the pandemic. I think she can find an awful lot of common ground with all of the different candidates groups in this election. So she has to find the issues on which there is a lot of common ground. I mean, I think cutting billions out of healthcare and education, she's probably not going to get away with that, but she could easily find ways to make the other candidates' followers supportive of her by saying, look, we have 125,000 people working for Alberta Health Services. 22 to 23,000 of them are middle managers, not upper managers, not frontline workers. There has got to be a lot of fat that you can trim out of that. You know, you talk to any nurse, for instance, in Alberta, and they will tell you that their paperwork has increased in the last 10 years by probably 50 to 60%. And that's because you have all these middle managers who want some sort of report every shift about this or that or the other thing that has very little to do with patient care. Get rid of those people. And so then you don't have to say, look, we're cutting the health budget by $5 billion and then allow bureaucrats to decide where to do that, because the bureaucrats will cut nurses first and other healthcare workers, other frontline workers. Say, look, here are the numbers. These are all the people in the middle of this stack who contribute very little of apparent value. Let's try and get rid of a lot of those people and get more into patient care. Then you could save money and at the same time expand patient care. So she has to find ways like that, that she can get to her agenda without alienating the supporters for Taves and Rebecca Schultz and Brian Jean and the others. It's going to require some cleverness, but I think she's clever enough to do that.
Now, Rachel Notley is waiting in the background. I never thought she would become premier other than for the great cataclysm you and I discussed 5 minutes ago. And then when she was finally turfed by Jason Kenney, I thought we would never see her again. But I think Rachel Notley actually believes, and I think there's some basis to her belief, that she has a chance of becoming premier again. I would never have thought it. I mean, Kenney united the two nominally conservative parties, and he really was Canada's strongest conservative politician. And here we are. He didn't even finish the term, and now Notley is licking her chops.
Yeah. Yes, she is.
How's, you know, it's too early to say, but I think it is a possibility she could win again. I think it was unthinkable for her to be premier the first time, but she did it. And so it's no longer unthinkable. It's very thinkable. And she was a socialist and she destroyed a lot of things, but she didn't have the same sort of gong show that the UCP has been the last 6 months. I think there's a real risk Rachel Notley could win again. I'm not saying I predict she will, but it's not a crazy scenario to have her restored as the premier again, Rachel Notley.
No, I think if the UCP remains together and there isn't the drip, drip, drip dissension that you and I talked about a couple minutes ago, I think if there's a united UCP, she cannot win. I think if there is one party of the center right in Alberta, the NDP cannot win. But the last poll that I reported on, which was a couple of weeks ago, I've ignored most of the polls that have come out during this leadership race because they're very small sample sizes and they aren't always just people who are members of the party or voting members of the party. But one that I did report on showed that 97% of people who voted NDP in the last election intend to vote NDP again. I have never seen that kind of intense loyalty anywhere in politics. And so she's going to get her 40%, 38 to 40% of the vote. That's a given. So if there's a split on the right and there's somebody hives off 8 to 10%, then yes, she could win again the way she did in 2015. 2015, they won a majority, but they didn't have a majority of the vote. They had about 41%.
Mm-hmm.
And that was enough to win in marginal ridings where Wildrose and the PCs split the vote. And the NDP came up the middle. If you look at any of those ridings where the margin of victory was not a majority of the vote, any of the constituents, once the two right of center parties amalgamated, the NDP lost all of those ridings. So that's the power of splitting the vote on the right. And so long as Smith can find a way to keep the party together, then I think she gets to win.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.